She's the lead.
Yeah, I was trying to. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you all to Budget Review Day 3. And in order to get us started, I'm going to ask the interim town manager to kick us off.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start today with the more convoluted of the options to vote on, but I think it makes sense where we have fire, police, and DPW all here to start with capital outlay. There's a lot going on that table, so I'll walk through specifically what we're discussing at the moment. If you scroll down the page, schools, that's funded by a warrant article. It'll come up later on this month. This year it'll be a bus. We'll talk about that on the 28th or 30th. Sewer and water, again, we'll talk about those during their operating budgets later on in the evening. So what we're really talking about is the general fund capital outlay. This is part of the operating budget, but it's funded through free cash each year. And this year we have $328,000 in public works, tax supported, again, vehicles and heavy equipment. Police has 4 cruisers at that $286. Fire has 2 fire prevention vehicles, which will be electric vehicles partially offset by Danvers Electric. And then recreation has a, Rob? No. The mini track loader is the recreation piece. So those ones specifically are what we're talking about under this part of the budget. Happy to answer questions in any order you'd like.
Okay. Mike, we'll start on that end.
No, I'm good.
I'm good.
Arthur?
I'm good.
Is this where we would talk about replacing the fire engine too?
Nope, so that'll be a separate warrant article later on this month. So this is more the routine churn vehicles. Anything larger, like, for example, the flushing vacuum truck would be a separate warrant article. A fire truck would be a separate warrant article.
And I'll leave it at that, except for, I noticed the sweeper pops up 2 or 3 times. That's got to be somewhere else too.
Nope, that is here, so we can talk about it here. That's in 3 different budgets, so it's water,
I saw that.
sewer, and general fund. But it probably makes the most sense to talk about it here if that works for you.
Does it?
Yeah.
Whatever these folks
Yeah.
want to do. Okay, I'm fine.
You want to come back to sweeper?
Yeah, we can come back to sweeper.
All right.
I saw the sweeper in 3 times also. That's the only question I had.
We're going to go down to the end and come back to sweeper.
Okay.
How's that?
Fine.
We sweep back. Yeah, all I got is sweeper.
Everyone, wait.
Head on back.
All right.
Let's talk
Go
about
ahead, Paul.
sweeper.
Sure. Stephen King, our town engineer, who will be presenting the public works and water and sewer budgets this evening, is happy to talk about the sweeper.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the Finance Committee, Steve King, Town Engineer, DPW. So the sweeper, as you see it, it's split up in 3 different ways. We have it split up once in the tax supported for $100,000, in the water division for $100,000, and then also the sewer division for $100,000. And the reason for that is the uses that we have for the sweeper. One source is stormwater sewer. We're required under our MS4 permit, our NIPD's permit, to perform street sweeping every year. That brings it about, excuse me, over like 500 tons of sediment that we pick up every year. On the tax supported side, obviously, you've probably seen the sweeper out downtown. Before doing any open houses or family festivals, additional sweeping that's necessary before we do events, pre and post for cleanup. On the water side, for when you have water main breaks, we're averaging over 16 to 20 water breaks. I call it the fiscal winter year. After those breaks, we usually have the street sweeper come in because they expose a lot of sediments to the surface. That's just a one-time pickup. That's very heavy sediments that we have to pick up. So the street sweepers usually go in there 2 to 3 times over the course of a day to make sure we clean up the street after the road is repaired. We're also using the street sweeper for any of our water distribution projects that we have closer to the paving side. So once the water distribution projects are complete, before we get into the paving phase, we would do a general street sweeping cleanup. And then before we do the actual paving on the street, we would also utilize our own sweeper to pick up the loose debris before we put down new mix on those streets. Albeit, example, Locust Street, one of our main roads, Hobart Street, we've done in the past. We're gonna be going down Wyndham Street at some point, so we have very large streets, a lot of different phases, a lot of uses for the street sweeper between the different divisions. So ultimately, during our decisions, over the winter time, we thought it'd be best to separate out that use or the funding between the different divisions. And that's why you see it in 3 different spots. So ultimately, it's a $300,000 piece of equipment split up between the 3 different divisions.
How about this, right, Wally? Any follow-up questions here on sweeper?
What are you gonna do with the old one?
The old one,
What's its value?
so the value, right now, we've talked to a few people, potentially trade it in. We get 15, 25K, or potentially go to auction for another, we could get another $10,000 bonus in range of that. So looking at probably 20 to 30K
What's it cost to rehab that?
to rehab.
The existing
The annual
street
cost
sweeper?
for,
What's it cost to rehab the existing street sweeper and keep it on for 3 to 5 more years?
well, it varies in cost per year. It depends on what has to be replaced between the brushes, but the brushes get 89 to 90 hours out of them, then those got to be replaced. The bigger sweeper we're using gets 120 hours out of that. The hydraulic hoses had to get replaced probably every couple of years, maybe less than that depending on the usage, because street sweepers in general, they only get about 48 years of average useful life. We usually have ours programmed for a capital replacement in 10 years. And we're coming up on 10 years. We're replacing a 2017, well, about in 2017, but it's a 2016, so it's coming up on that 10-year replacement.
So you don't have a cost to rehab it? I know
It's general maintenance. Right now, it's like kind of that prime point, cost analysis. Where do we want to take it for the next year? It's probably, we're at that point where we're at the 10 years. It could go down ultimately in a failure if we continue to use it, or it could just be another year of just replacing hydraulic hoses.
But if I sent it out, replaced all the hydraulic hoses, spent $75,000 on it, got it back and got 5 more years out of it, would it be worth it?
I mean, that's,
I mean, that's your call, I'm asking you.
I think at this point, based on our useful life expectancy of the street sweeper, to invest that much, I think to get another 10-plus years out of it, I'm only gonna get 5 years out of it, just doing that general maintenance. So that's why we're recommending it for a full replacement.
I don't think I asked for general maintenance, I asked for overhaul, which means all the hydraulic lines, any of the pumps. I understand it's a gamble. And money's tight, are we all in agreement here? I mean, if I spent, $75,000 as opposed to $300,000.
I think we
Kind
obviously,
of a big
we
deal
wanna know.
in the DPW budget.
Yeah, I think we understand that we all in the gym, that we use a sweeper and we need a sweeper.
I would agree with you 100%, but I'm gonna let you guys go with this.
Okay, coming down. Go ahead.
So the total ticket cost across all the warrant, so we split it across, basically it's cost accounting. It's, what's the total ticket?
300,000.
300. And this one's been in service for 8 years?
Yep.
I don't have any other questions.
No questions.
Can I ask, just because I'm still a little confused in terms of the way this warrant is set up. That number 1.891 includes that includes the vacuum truck, correct?
Yeah, the only thing, right now, we're voting on the $843,000.
Okay.
But since the sweeper crosses the water and sewer budgets as well, we're talking about it all at once for the
Okay,
sweeper.
okay.
But the actual vote on this is the 840.
Yeah, I'm trying to match it up with pages 99 and 100.
Yeah.
I think I have
Yeah, the
it,
delta
but-
is that the vac truck is probably
Okay.
backed out in the capital plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Paul?
I'm not seeing the sweeper up there, but I'm seeing it in my book, right? So, but there's no enterprise funds in this at all. This is just tax-supported.
The vote is tax-supported, however, one of the tax-supported pieces is a sweeper, which is 300 grand, and is being split 100 grand from tax, 100 from the water operating budget, 100 from the sewer operating budget.
All on earnings based on tax.
No, a third of it,
You got me, really.
It's a 300, so it's a 300,000, it's a
This cost, what is this thing gonna cost in total?
$300,000.
Yes, okay.
100,000 we're gonna pay out of free cash for the tax side. 100,000 will appear later on this evening in the water operating budget.
Okay.
And 100,000 will appear right after that in the sewer operating budget.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, now, you said you've used it 8 years,
Yes, we've had it since 2017.
but it was a year old when you got it?
Yeah.
So it's in its 9th year?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We never did, and this is just to clarify thought, but then nothing about the cost or, for some reason, I must have gotten the wrong impression years ago, that we used to rent out a sweeper way back. Was that, am I wrong or am I right?
No, we still, because of the amount that we are required to street sweep, we do sometimes call in an additional sweeper
Okay.
to help out as well. And you'll see that in the tax board budget, sweeping.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, that's good. I'm glad I'm not losing it
But
altogether.
that cost has dramatically gone down with the use of our own sweeper as well.
Yeah, okay.
But when our existing sweeper is out for mechanic repairs, and we need to use it, we can call in that additional rental to help us out.
Well, that leads me to another question that I didn't have. So when you have a situation where the new one, let's say, breaks down for some reason or other 2 years from now, you have to bring in a rental.
Correct.
So let's say for $50,000 or $75,000, we renovated the one we're giving up now and just constantly use it as a backup and didn't have to rent when we need to rent.
I think it's tough to say that. I understand one of the finance committee members regarding the potential cost of an overhaul.
Yeah?
But again, that's the mechanical components, also the structural body of it is, that has to be evaluated as well, and that could be another cost.
Yeah.
And we can figure out what the cost of the different pieces are, mechanical components. The actual still body of it is going to still be under a lot of corrosion with its use in the streets.
Well, I'm not opposed to voting for this, I'll be honest with you. But if it's a reasonable amount of money to restore the present one, keep it going as a backup, rather than having to go out and pay a rental fee every time, we need an extra sweeper, whether it's because one broke down or there's too much work, I'd be looking forward to maybe thinking that as a possibility. I don't know where you get the money, but it may be more than 75,000, but it's not.
Definitely.
How much do we spend annually on renting? Is that the full line?
Right. The renting versus the rehab as opposed to that.
I'll pull it up for you. Hold on 1 second. Sweeping proposed this year is 15,000.
So I guess my only counter to that would be, for the 15,000, for those extra sweepings, you need to invest however much you need to keep it up and running, lose the 20 to 30 grand on the trade-in value. I'm not sure that
I got
at that
you.
point it's worth
Yeah,
it.
Good point, yeah, okay. All right, thank you, that's it.
Arthur, we miss you.
Just kind of a little bit of a follow-up on that. So the current sweeper, have we had periods where it's been out of service over the past few years?
That's correct, yep.
Has that out-of-service period grown during the 8 or 9 years that we've used it?
I'd say it's become a little bit more difficult when we do replacements, not for an extended amount of time. I would say not in the month to 2 month time frame, but when it's out a couple of weeks and we're getting into the heavy season, depending on that, because it's primarily used, I would say, spring, summer, and fall. It depends on when that hits. So we can time something so when we're not going to use it specifically, like in the wintertime, we could then schedule that repair and we don't really see a difference. But if we're in the middle of the spring and summer, or fall and our heavy cleaning periods, and we need that street sweeper, it's tough to say, how do we want to do that replacement and how we want to time that out.
So, just so I can get a feel for it, assuming we buy the new one, which I'm sure we will, and we get that, when will that actually go into service? When will we have that?
So I've talked with our mechanics that right now they're calling about 90 days
Okay.
from order, so that would be late fall.
And then when we have the new one in place, do we anticipate that for a good period of time, it won't, I mean, you never know, but we won't be losing service time from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have its general O&M, like, obviously replacing fluids, sometimes hoses, but again, we don't expect a new sweeper to have that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it like over a 10-year, when you're in year 1 versus year 10, how
Time out.
much more time do we lose in year 10 versus year 1? That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. I know you can't put a precise number on it, but is that part of what you're factoring in as to why it's time for a new one?
Yeah, I would say it's drastically less in years 1 to 5 than it is in years 5 to 10.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I'm still baffled by these two things. So we have one line up there for $843,000 for general fund funded by free cash and operating budget, which I assume is also the $843,000 that's found on page 99.
That is correct.
But then we go to the 328, the 286, the 195, the 334, all of which are in that 843.
Correct.
So why are we counting it twice on that sheet?
Where are we counting it twice?
It says total capital.
843 plus 150, I'm doing it on the fly, so if I'm wrong, don't judge me.
I know
843,
I know it is, but
150,
just, I understand that.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
Yeah, again, it's a confusing slide, and we can look to clean it up, but it's just showing you what the 843 is made up of.
Okay.
The four numbers after general fund make
yeah,
up the general.
I know they do,
So
but
we don't
they-
add those back in,
Yeah.
it's just the 843.
Yeah, you would normally have a column that has all that stuff that adds up to the bottom for the total.
done, okay, Mike?
How much are you going to beat me up over this one?
I did, no, obviously it's me.
No, we can make it clear.
Slide, it's-
Yeah.
As long as I know, I just want to make sure I know.
Yeah.
Let
That
the
the
record
total
show there's
capital
a-
outlay is 1.891 million. It is what basically appears in this book, and that's just informational purposes that we have on the screen.
328, 286, and 195, third foot should be inside.
That's exactly.
I agree.
That's right.
New
Let the
column.
record show it should be inset. It is not a
All right.
Thank you,
math
Mr. Chairman.
calculation. Anyone else? So I have two. Let me, how are they, so it's a 90-day turnaround, so is it built from scratch? So they're doing like a custom build like they do school buses? They just take your order and then build it to suit?
No, they have stock. There is stock available.
They do have stock. And then, I'll do a follow-up. Failure rate after receipt, I don't know if we haven't had one in a long time, and then warranty.
Two great questions. Specifically warranty, I do not have the top of my head, but I can follow that up, but I think it's typically a 3-year, 2 to 3 year, but expect failure.
15 grand?
You asked about failure rate as well?
Yes, I just say that, knowing when we purchase buses, they're brand new off the lot, and then 30 days in, I got to send them back because something fell out, because someone fell asleep on the line when they were building it, evidently.
No, I've not.
So I'm just curious.
I think once we get the piece of equipment, our fleet crew definitely will go through it and make sure it's operating. Make sure our operator who would be using it at the street department is well familiar with it and
Okay.
checking it all out. If there's anything wrong, we obviously right away would send it back before we put it in use.
And we have a dedicated we have a
Let me-
dedicated operator for this now?
We do, yes.
And last one, Paul.
Well, you asked a
You good?
question about warranty, so it's already out to bid and settled, right?
No, we just asked for the quotes, that's how we got the
Oh,
price.
so
but
you
we can't
haven't
do anything after
finalized.
till July 1st.
Okay.
Is it
Thanks for your
manufactured in the
patience.
US?
All right, so questions from the audience?
Is it manufactured in the US?
Oh,
It is an Elgin brand, which I believe is manufactured in the U.S.
questions from the...
We are looking at the climate as well as far as a lot of our vehicles.
Let's not pick that scab anymore. Let me go to the audience, please. Any from the- Seeing no hands. All right. A motion would be in order.
Do we make a motion on this now, or on this particular?
On
Yeah,
the
the motion would be on the general fund
843.
capital outlay of 843,000.
I'll move that we move to approve 843,000 for the capital outlay.
I second it.
moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm an aye as well. All right. We survived. What's next?
Next, we'll spin all the way back to the beginning. And this year, we'll be starting with the police budget. Police won the coin flip with fire this year, so they'll lead us off. 9.2% increase driven by salary and wages. So we'll talk a little bit about this, and again, the chief can get into detail on the new additional officer. But essentially, what we've done the past few years, and we've talked about it in some of these hearings over the past 2 years, is knowing that we weren't going to get to fully staffed We would authorize the chief to get to fully staffed if he could find the bodies. Knowing that he wouldn't, we would cheat down the number by usually 2 patrol officers. Again, just to maintain service and to balance the budget. Knowing that if push came to shove and those materialized, we would come to find the money through some fashion. Well, the chief has done a yeoman's work on getting to fully staffed, and we're pretty much close to fully staffed at this point. So that means we have to fill in that vacancy factor we've been booking for the past 2 years. So that, in addition to the new officer, leads to the 9.2% increase. And then operating, while it's flat, one thing to note is it also includes a staffing study, which has been discussed at several board meetings over the year. The staffing study will be staffing and structure, and that's a projected cost of, I believe, $9,500. And Chief's happy to answer any questions.
Okay, you want to come back down to Wally?
I'm good.
That-
Jimmy, can you walk me through a little bit? So I know, it sounds like, I see like what Rodney said, we had the theoretical full headcount the last couple of years was 58 and a half. But we haven't really been operating on that until
That's
very
correct.
recently.
So right now, we currently have 1 vacancy, and we have 1 officer in the academy right now. So we're actually at the best point we've been in probably 3 to 5 years. The academy graduate will be graduating in September, and then we'll hope to get a new list come June, July this year, and we'll start working on that vacancy. If the extra position's funded, we'll do 2 vacancies as of July 1st.
What was the thought process with adding another officer on top of what we considered fully staffed?
So fully staffed is 46 officers fully funded by the town of Danvers. There is a 47th that was hired, that's funded by the Essex Tech 100%, so that's 47. Back in '98, when I was hired, it was the first time they expanded, I think was from up to 46 officers. Then back in 2008, we went up to 48 officers. Within a year, we laid off 2 officers, bringing us back down to that 46 mark. So this goal is to get that 48th position back. The way I envision it would be a community impact officer, someone who can deal with community issues that the patrol officers cannot pay enough attention to because they're responding to call for services and other responsibilities. So they could do domestic violence follow-ups, mental health follow-ups. If there's parking issues in the square, we can dedicate an officer that's not on patrol to addressing community issues within the community. So that's the theory. Most departments have a community impact unit of 2 to 3, 4 officers. I'd love to see us get there at some point, but I think 1, at least for now, would help us kind of with some of the responsibilities that we have in the community that we want to be able to deal with.
And are we talking about like kind of the new, like did the momentum for this extra position build after what happened in November?
So for the past 3 to 5 years, 3 years since I've become chief, I've talked to the town manager about expanding our department. We need to grow. We've been the same since 1998, essentially. The problem was we had such a hard time filling our positions. The conversation was, hey, let's get to our fully staffed, then we'll consider adding officers. The incident this past fall led a little bit to this push. I think we definitely need to grow. I think the staffing study is a responsible way of looking at our needs. And then once that staffing study is done, look at the recommendations and then create a plan on how to implement it. If you said to me today, hire 10 people, we would struggle to hire 10 people at once. The candidates aren't out there. It's very difficult to hire police officers right now. So I think we need to have a plan on, we need to expand the department by this many people. Let's have a plan on how we can implement that. And I think, also having the new town manager on board with the conversation would be helpful as well.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
No questions.
Well, fully staffed doesn't mean that that's where you really want to be.
Correct.
Okay, so I appreciate that, and I can see that with today the way it is, there seems to be a use for, well, I always hear people talk about having some patrolmen patrol streets and walk down square, but we're not at that stage yet.
We can do it at times, but oftentimes, the times we want to do it at are busy times.
Sure.
Yesterday afternoon, we had backlog of calls that we didn't have officers to respond to, so we were trying to catch up on calls, so that takes away from the ability to actually spend more time downtown or at the park. So again, I think a community impact officer would be free from the responding to calls and be able to concentrate on community issues that we're facing.
Well, I'll end with this. I have nothing but praise for the police.
Thank you.
And I starts from the top down. And you mentioned some things here that you have to protect constitutional rights. You have to collaborate and partner with citizens and protect vulnerable populations. And from what I see, this department is doing every single one of those things and trying to do better. And I really do appreciate what you do, Chief.
Thank you.
First of all, I agree with that. Secondly, just because you mentioned that you said yesterday you had a backlog, you were backed up, you couldn't address everything as you would like to. How often does that happen? Does that happen a lot, or is that pretty infrequent?
More and more. Depends on the time of the year now. Again, it's getting nicer out. Calls for service go up, usually in the spring and summer. Obviously, winter months are usually a little bit slower. We're seeing a very large increase in shopliftings at the mall, mental health issues. So we're seeing a lot more calls that take more time sometimes, a lot of accidents. So, certain times of the day just get busy, that 2 to 6 o'clock is a busy time of the day for us. So it's just a matter of managing the calls, and again, I think additional staffing would help long term.
So over the past few years, have the amount of calls, have they noticeably gone up?
I think the time we spend on calls has gone up a lot more. We're dealing with mental health calls a lot better than we used to 25 years ago, which is more time. We spend a lot more time with families, working with clinicians, bringing clinicians out to people's residents. That all takes time. So it's not, officers are spending more times on calls, and types of investigations are getting longer. They're requiring additional search warrants or technical skills. So it just takes long to do certain things right now as well, in addition to call volume.
Have you had to do additional training for the officers in the mental health area? What have you been doing in there? Because obviously that's becoming more of a problem.
Sure. So every officer in Danvers will attend a 40-hour crisis intervention training class. So it's a 40-hour class that's specifically on signs and symptoms of mental illness, de-escalation, recognizing types of medications and illnesses. So every officer attends that 40-hour class. Our 3 newest officers, I think, are scheduled to go in mid-May to a class in Beverly. So that's one of the things we have. We also have a jail diversion clinician who's in office 3 days a week. So she's a clinician through Leahy Health who is available to come out on calls with us, respond with us to calls to help us facilitate either some follow-up with the person or placement in a facility or institution or some type of area like that. On that note there, the current state budget, they're dropping the staffing from $18 million to proposed $3.6 million roughly for that jail diversion program, which is grant funded. So we are nervous about July 1st, if that funding doesn't change at the state level, whether or not we'll be able to maintain having a clinician 3 days a week in the community.
Probably it would be better to have the clinician 5 days a week.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, so, just a kind of a general, I know that it's not anything that we can do now, but what would your workforce look like if you had exactly what you needed to do what needs to be done? How many more people would you have?
That's a tough question. That's why I think we want to bring out outside consultant in. Like, we want to look at all different factors, ask questions like, if we went to body cameras, what would that mean? They're great tools for law enforcement, but there's a lot of time and effort that goes into processing footage, doing compliance. So this study will hopefully look at all those issues and give us a better picture. We'd love to have a traffic division, having officers who are dedicated to traffic enforcement. Right now, our officers are assigned to do traffic enforcement during the shift, but oftentimes they set up and they get called away to other calls. So having a dedicated traffic unit. There's other administrative functions within the department that we could probably do better with if we had better staffing. So it's hard to give an exact number.
Sure. But more.
More, yes.
More, definitely more. No, thanks. And again, I agree with how Paul ended. I think, you're doing a great job and with the resources that you have. So hopefully you'll be able to continue to do that.
We appreciate that.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Do you know, when was the last time, do you think, we actually had a dedicated square officer that, 70s, right?
Probably Jimmy George was the last.
Yeah, my father was down there, I was a little kid, I can remember being brought down there I mean, I just, it's always interesting when people talk about that. There was also 450 kids down there.
Right.
At that time, that needed to be dealt with. It was a very different world by far, much worse, frankly, than we even want to begin to imagine what it's like down there now, under any circumstances. But Arthur covered a lot of the same thing that I would have wanted to cover, which is the idea of if you did sort of have just the blank slate and the ability to do what you want to do from an operational standpoint, what would you need? And I think that bringing in the outside entity to be able to give us some direction in that will be worthwhile. I mean, obviously, there are just substantial budgetary constraints, as we've known for, again, I was on the select board when we bumped it up by 2. That was 25, 27 years ago.
Right.
So it's been, and the town has increased size-wise in that period of time. Things have changed dramatically in terms of what you guys are expected to do. It's a very different world from what it was 25 years ago, for sure. You know, again, my father wouldn't recognize police work today by any stretch of the imagination. So you guys do a good job. You've done a fantastic job, I think, as well. And we're very fortunate to have you and the people that we've got below you, and it's a good staff, I think, at this point. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So I have a couple, Chief. If you could just explain what pushes officers into overtime and how you are preparing for that, because that's a larger number in this budget. So clearly you're anticipating or preparing for.
I believe it went up percentage-wise. We have certain overtime requirements for in-service training and that we try to budget in. The rest is pretty much historical data. You know, and unfortunately, we can't predict injuries in other items. At the last meeting, I think we had 6 officers with long-term sickness. We're down to 1. We have 1 officer left on long-term illness. He'll be back hopefully May 1st. We still have 1 injured officer who will probably be out through the summertime. We have 1 officer who was on military deployment. I'm happy to report she is back in the U.S., but she's still wrapping up some of her military obligation. So hoping to bring her back in hopefully by first, second week of June. So it's a lot of unpredictable, you know, things like caseload. You know, if we have a major incident, a lot of overtime goes into, you know, investigations, you know, safety issues with that. So it's kind of hard to predict exactly, but usually we use historical data to look at what we've spent over the past few years and try to use that as our guide.
And then the last one's, clearly you've done a great job with recruitment, and then you're still investing in that area. You know, just talk a little bit about the plans that you have moving forward in the fiscal year.
Yeah, we've been very lucky. We've got some really great candidates over the past 3-4 years now. It's a constant battle. You know, the list when I came on, there would be 60, 70, 80 names on that list. Now we get 15, 16 names. For the first time in my 28 years, one recruitment ago, we actually had to go outside the Danvers list. And we caught the civil service, and we have 10 more names to help us get candidates. He says, we'll give you 75. And I'm like, we can't process 75. He goes, trust us, if we give 75, you might get 3 names out of it. That's the problems we're dealing with. So we're constantly trying to recruit. There are some new officers with civil service we're exploring with the town and HR, where we can do like a hybrid approach, where we can hire half of the number of employees we're looking for through the traditional civil service structure, and then other half, however we choose to hire them. That might be an option for us looking in the future if we try to opt into that, to kind of open up the ability to do some more recruitment.
Okay. And then my last question is retention, you know, how we're doing and plans to, you know, keep doing well.
We are doing well. We kind of had a group leave about 5 years ago. And, you know, some people want bigger departments, some people wanted small departments, some people just wanted to change. We're pretty solid right now. We have a consistent staff. We do try to track, you know, retirement age. You know, we have, you know, I'm actually in the group now who is probably in the next 3 to 5, 6 years of retirement. After that, we have a very young department. We have, you know, I'd probably say, you know, almost half is, you know, under 15 years of service. So we're going to have a very young department. So I think we're in good we're in a good shape.
Good. Good. Questions from the audience? Motion to approve?
This one.
Move the budget.
Is there one question? I'm sorry.
Was that? I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
You have to
Yes,
go
please,
up.
got to go up.
Tell people who you are.
While she's going up, is there anyone from the audience? Because I don't want to miss folks. I didn't see the hand. All right, thank you.
Linda Flaherty, Precinct 6. My question is with regard to the clinician that's 3 days a week. Is that a state employee or a departmental employee?
So we have a contract with Lakey Behavioral Health, so they provide the clinician, and the grant money pays for that person's salary. That grant money is also paid to send our officers to that 40-hour CIT class. So we use that, I think last year was a $103,000 grant from DMH to help pay for clinician services and training services.
You expressed a concern about that being able to be continued. Is there an option if that money should dry up? And I wonder if you have a number for that particular role, for us to hire somebody to replace that person, and how much would that cost so that we wouldn't lose that?
My estimate would be probably between $60,000 and $80,000 a year to fund that position. I think right now we go through Lakey Behavioral Health, which I think is helpful because the supervision is through Lakey. The liability insurance is through Lakey. So I think contracting is probably a better process versus trying to independently hire a clinician. But again, you know, the state budget is still evolving. Mass Chiefs is really pushing to fund that budget item fully. We're talking to everyone we can talk to try to get that done because a lot of communities rely on that money for these services.
All right.
Move the budget.
Second.
Moving to second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the fire budget. We have Acting Chief Jamie Schaffner. I am sure Chief Brian Barry is watching at home as he convalesces. We look forward to him to rejoining us in the coming weeks. But tonight, we're talking about the fire budget. Salary and wages is up 4.28%. We talked about this over the past couple of years, specifically last year on the FY25 budget, the 3 SAFER-funded firefighters. We had a 3-year grant for $1 million. That grant ended this February, so we talked about it a little bit during the FY25 budget, where you'd have to absorb some of that cost. And now in FY26, we fully absorb that cost to maintain those firefighters on staff. The increase is partially offset by a reduction in overtime. And then operating expenses, that's primarily driven by contractual obligations and an uptick in vehicle maintenance costs. And we're happy to answer questions.
Mike,
No, I'm good, thank you.
Arthur.
Just kind of same question I asked Chief about your staff. Is your staffing where you need it to be at this point?
So, like Rodney pointed out, this federal grant, the SAFER grant, we were able to get our 3 positions filled that were vacant for quite a while, and we're back to our traditional fully staffed, which we're happy to be at. Moving ahead to the future, much like the police chief said, a staffing study is probably on the radar to evaluate the needs of the town with our department.
Okay, great, thank you.
So the same question I asked the police. You're at full staff, but
Yes, we are fully staffed, and again, thanks to the SAFER
there's work
grant.
to be done, I guess, is the best.
Well, I mean, as we can all see, that the town is growing and changing, and we should take a serious look at that in the future, and a staffing study is probably the way to go.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, and I should ask police also, do you have grant writing within your department? Where are the grants?
So I can speak to that. We do a lot of grant work. So this past year, like I said, the big one is we had a 3-year federal grant that paid fully for 3 positions and benefits to the town at no cost. But we also annually we've gotten equipment grants from the state for a $19,000 grant. We were just awarded another $9,000 grant from that same department where we buy a lot of equipment out of. There's another emergency management grant where we get $6,000 to $10,000 where we're constantly upgrading our equipment through that. And those are annual things that we put in for. We're also constantly looking out for federal and state opportunities. When we get to the warrant, you'll see we apply for a federal grant to hopefully try to cover the cost of the fire truck. So we do a lot of grant research and writing and attempts, and we are successful quite a bit.
Good, thank you. Thanks.
Are you guys coming back to talk about the fire truck?
We are, that's for the
That's-
warrant.
I shouldn't bother you with questions about that tonight.
I look forward to your question.
It's not really you, it's the private equity dudes that own the companies that are jacking up the prices.
I think we're on the same page there.
Ask questions about. I have no other questions. I'm good.
I have no questions. Any from the audience?
Good evening, Bill Bates, Town Meeting Member Precinct 4, and thank you to the FinCom for your service to the town. My question is, all other departments, the unleaded gasoline is going down, but the fire department is up 16%, and I just don't know. I'd like to understand that better.
Sure thing. So our fuel estimates are all done by the DPW based on their usage and equations. Speaking operationally, I can say that most of our vehicles are diesel. Our 3 vehicles that I can think of that are gasoline are, 3 years ago, with the start of this grant, we were able to add a second fire prevention officer. They're the guys you see out doing all the code enforcement inspections. Their workload they've caught up, they've been able to catch up and increase, as well as our incident commander, that SUV you see that says Car 4 on it. That's gasoline, and every year they're out more, calls are increasing, it's probably just increased usage. However, with the passage of the capital, the fire prevention will be transitioning into electric vehicles, which will significantly reduce that cost the next year.
Yes.
Linda Flaherty, Precinct 6. I haven't changed in the past 5 minutes. You brought up the subject of EV vehicles. In the budget, my assumption would be there is significant training for firefighters, and I understand EVs pose a unique challenge for firefighters. Can you speak to the training that our force has for EV fires? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, an emerging trend in society and with the fire services, electric vehicle fires and lithium-ion issues, not just vehicles, but everything from small bicycles and toys. We have seen incidents here in Danvers. And so the training, there's plenty of training from the State Fire Academy. There's the State Hazmat team has provided a bunch of training. There's also private companies that have done training. We've purchased more equipment specific equipment to deal with these issues in particular. We've had some, what I would call close call incidents in town and some minor issues that have been, the trainings already show that it's paid off, and we've kept those incidents to really small incidents.
Yes.
Nova Yosemite Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. This isn't directed at the fire department exactly, but with transition to electric vehicles, do the departments pay the electric division, or is that just sort of a wash? Does it just get provided by the electric division?
In terms of the charging of the
Yeah,
vehicles?
yeah.
They are charged for the vehicles, yes, for the charging, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so the fire department will have to pay the electric division?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. No more questions from the audience? A motion, please.
Move the budget.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
So I'm going to direct to the town manager and see, do we need a recess, or is the computer ready to go? It was,
If you don't mind a 5-minute recess, this new presentation laptop that we debuted this week is doing updates.
Yes.
So.
Can we address some grants that we do, or
say that again?
can we address some grants that we?
No, it's okay, I didn't know who wrote them, which department or not.
Right.
Yeah, so that's good, thank you.
Okay, all right. We're going to take 5 minutes for technical updates, and then we'll be back here with Public Works.
Enjoying the spinning
Thank you.
wheel.
Thank you all for that, and we are back.
Thank you. Appreciate the patience. Next, we'll go into Public Works. We'll start with the Public Works tax-supported budget. Town Engineer Stephen King will rejoin us. Salary and wages based on contractual obligations is up 4.23%. Slight increase in operating expenses. You'll notice in the actual line item detail, contract cleaning services up significantly, offset with cuts elsewhere to, again, try to get to a balanced budget. The operating budget also includes, like we talked about on Monday, moving pest control from the health department budget to the buildings in the public works budget where it's managed. And then we also include funding for potential flashing beacons. That's under the DTAC line, which we can talk about as well. Happy to answer any questions. What's that?
Great advocate.
Wally,
Actually, want to start on the other end?
you want me to start on the other end?
No, I don't want him to start on this end.
Arthur?
Don't go at once.
Okay.
Stuff like bituminous concrete, some of the other, are you concerned moving into next year that we may end up, because I think you're probably the one department that could be impacted by purchases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are concerned about that, but we're currently in an existing contract. So we have a solid 3-year contract with a paving contractor. So we can also utilize that funding that we have on top of any additional previous bids that we've done for mix. So we go up per year. I don't see a huge escalation in the cost in the next year or so that we wouldn't be able to absorb this in the budget.
Okay. And I guess somewhat of the question of the hour, my understanding is that when we deal with snow removal, ice snow removal, that winter line item, in the past, we have basically gone back 5 years, done the average of the 5 years previous, and that's what we've gone forward with, which my understanding is occasionally bites us in the butt, and may have bit us in the butt this year as well. But I'm assuming we're doing the same thing in this particular budget. Do we think that it might make some sense to not do that and to have that based on maybe a 10-year average, or just taking that amount and looking at realistically what this last year was, which I think would be it wasn't terrible by any stretch. I mean, it certainly wasn't the 2 years before, but it certainly wasn't terrible.
But it was more significant than we've had in the past 5 years. So that's why we see a change. But that's why we saw the uptick over this year. I mean, obviously, we would discuss that internally, but we typically have looked at it in a 5-year time frame, and we've checked the outliers. So if we've had a 1 year that may be really high, maybe take that out, but trying to keep it somewhat level. We don't absorbently want to go too high in the budget, knowing that we could probably offset it with some other factors within our own budget. So it's something we definitely look at. When we get the sheet and we look at everything, I always go back, quite a significant amount of time and kind of see the trend. And then if we can see a trend line of like maybe catching or estimating what it may be in the next 1 to 2 years, we definitely would have that discussion and see if maybe it makes sense to be more conservative than just going with the average, or maybe go with the median.
Are we going to need to have a special town meeting before the annual town meeting to be able to transfer money to deal with stuff?
So that already is in the warrant, in the warrant articles under transfers. An appropriation to balance the snow and ice budget this year. But again, to Stephen's point, again, we can look at, at some point, we probably do need to get to a baseline number of a minimum. But again, just as we don't want to overreact to a bad winter this year, we didn't the year before dramatically cut the budget when we had a couple of mild winters. But to your point, at some point, we need to get to a baseline. And again, we also at some point probably want to think about at least minimum level funding, because snow and ice, Danvers historically, other than maybe if you did in 2015, I don't know, but snow and ice is the only one you actually can deficit spend and raise on the recap the following year. The only way you can do that is if you level fund those line items year over year. So again, moving forward at a minimum, probably, in the coming years, we want to at least get to a baseline and then at minimum level fund that. That way, if there was a catastrophic winter and we couldn't find the funding available, we could theoretically raise it on next year's recap.
Yeah, okay, good.
I don't want to sound like Barry Burbank or somebody like that, but remember him, Barry Burbank?
But, you know, I mean, it was, the winter was not as, was worse than the last few years, but it wasn't like terrible. We weren't deluged with snow. So, I mean, that's going to happen at some point. It's not as though it's never going to happen again. And we're not always going to get 3 years of Palm Springs winters here either. So, so I don't even know if you can really, what you can really do. You can't, okay, the last 5 years, let's do that, because next year could be totally different.
Correct.
So this has to be some, I don't know, it's a gamble. So the staffing is the same, correct? There's no change in staffing
Correct.
numbers, and the salary and wages really mostly just contract?
Correct.
What about, how's, among that 66.7 staffing, turnover in there? Is there a lot of turnover? Is it minimal turnover? What did it look like over the past year?
We've actually been filling positions recently. So, again, we do have one or two that may be here for a year or two, may get the license and move on to another town or municipality. But I think Rob and everyone have done a great job of trying to attract new talent and bring more people in and help retain them and keep them on our team. So I haven't personally seen a lot of turnover. I've seen and it's been great to see the same faces every day.
All right, great, thank you.
You're up.
Yeah, I think this is a very positive budget. I have a couple of questions, going back to, I think maybe it was Mr. Bates, and I'm looking at the utilities, and you're projecting lower oil heating, propane, gas heating, and I'm sure somewhere in the budget, gasoline. Is this pie in the sky, or are we, because it's one thing you can't, to me, as a public citizen, you can never count on a gasoline price. You go up to the center of town, and 2 days later you come, and it's either 20% up, 20 cents up or 20 cents down. And then even electricity, we're supposedly paying less. I just wonder, where do you get the numbers from, I guess, is more like I want to ask. Is it 5-year studies, or?
Simply, it's our utility bills, averaging our five-year utility bills, and then looking at the predicted therms based on what we're paying today and what's predicted for the future versus, excuse me, on the Units Energy Information Administration. So looking at both those numbers, seeing where the inflation may come, and then going back and recalculating based on our 5-year average what we may see.
Okay.
That goes for gas heating, propane, oil heating, and electricity.
Yes.
All those
Yes.
utilities.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set.
I guess my question's towards the janitorial services, the increase towards that. Is there still a benefit in outsourcing that and not bringing the staff in? Seeing that increase in the contractual services?
The contract cleaner contractual.
The janitorial services at the schools? It says 2.4 increase driven in part by increases in contractual obligations and school building janitorial services. What's driving the increase in the school janitorial services? Is it additional events? Is it?
The exact number.
This is the contracting, we're talking about SJ Services.
Also, SJ Services.
Yeah.
So that is, yes, that is contractual. We do look at that both on a bid basis of what we may go out and search for additional contractors, or we use the state bid. Based on what we're seeing for numbers, we are seeing a large increase in contractual services in general, about 15% increase. As much as we would like to try and increase our own staff on the janitorial side for internal, we just don't have that capability to keep up with all the buildings and all the cleaning. So the staff does their best with what they have to work with. They do a phenomenal job, but it's very helpful to have that additional service consultants come in and help do the cleaning.
Yeah, they're great. And the staff is great, and the additional services are great, too. And then we did see a shift in numbers at the elementary school level when the school budget was here earlier in the week, and we did see maybe Smith might go up and Thorpe numbers might go down, or a slight shift. Do you factor that in with the services, with the janitorial staff, to make sure that as the numbers shift throughout the school, that the staff shifts as well to support the?
Yeah, absolutely. We would work directly with the principals at each of the schools to make sure that we're maintaining those schools as they want.
Okay, good, thank you. And then my only other question is, I see that there's 20 streets paved. how do residents know if their street is on a list to get paved, and/or how do they know to request that their street needs to get paved? If they live on a dead-end road that never gets driven, but it's a mess, how do they get a request in for that?
They would simply just call the DPW office and let our staff know that they want someone to come out and take a look at their street. We typically go on we have a 3-year paving program.
Okay,
We know those streets can be shifted or moved depending on the severity of them.
yeah,
We're going to do a new drive-through of all of our streets in the next year.
Yep.
So that would create a new rating of all of our streets, which gives us another indication of what we need to put as priority and what can be shifted down. And what
Okay.
type of treatment that street may need.
and if the street is half Middleton, half Danvers, how does that get divided between the town?
We would do Danvers.
Yeah? Okay. Okay,
We'd work with Town of Middleton. We have a great relationship with them. If there was something that was necessary. for
Quarter of a
us to
circle,
kind of
okay.
Partner with.
Okay.
They have another contract that they could use. We could probably coordinate a joint effort on that.
okay, good to know. Okay, thank you.
Before you go to Ted, can I just ask, so every 3 years, what does that mean? Every 3 years, every street's going to get paved?
No. So we try and look
Yeah,
ahead
what is
3
3-year
years. So we
paving
try and
for?
create a list of streets within the next 3 years that we want to pave.
Okay.
And then that's kind of our moving list to set in for our contractual bids that we put out, to help us get a range of our numbers based on what we might get for Chapter 90 and what we want to put in our pavement management article. So the streets will shift, per se, like if we have, say, 25 to 30 streets that are on our list that need a priority mill and overlay, they'll put it on a 3-year program. It may be in 25, maybe 26, and maybe in 27. And all of a sudden, another street may pop in that we had in 28, may get moved up all of a sudden because of a bad winter into year 25. So it's just a big range of streets that we use within a 3-year period to make sure we're tracking those. And if people have a question, we can say, yes, that street's on our list, or that street's not on our list.
Okay, all right. Yeah, mine, I think, is on a 45-year paving schedule, but that's okay.
Must be a 99.
It's a very small street.
Can I just, so we no longer, I think we used to always have we had a pretty regular pavement plan in which basically at year 3, we would do the crack sealing. At year 5, we would do the top, whatever they called it, and then every 7 years, each street was expected to do the full repavement. We no longer are on that type of a schedule for each street in town.
I think based on the methods that we've done and the work that we've done, it's probably pushed out to like a 5-year timeframe before we go back and crack seal streets.
Yeah.
Then you're looking at that 5 to 15-year timeframe, maybe just doing a surface overlay or a seal type treatment. And then we get into 15+ years, that's when we get into the potential of just a mill and overlay that's taking an 1.5 to 2 inches off the road, putting a new surface down. Anything beyond that, if it's a heavily traveled roadway, you then may get into reclamation and repaving and regrading a street.
Thank you.
Aaron,
No, he answered it.
I got
Thank
it.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
anybody else before I go this way?
Sorry, Ted.
Okay.
I got one.
How are
could've
we,
been second.
how are we doing overall in the budget this year relative to the I guess, actual fiscal year '25 versus what's in here as the budget for this year?
Obviously, you know about the snow, but other than that, we're tracking to be right on budget.
And how much is the snow overage?
That's
It's $440,000 over.
280.
Some of that, so you'll see in the town meeting warrant, request to transfer funds, some of that overage, they'll just eat through some salary and wages surplus, so the salary and wages overtime for snow and ice, we can eat, but the additional costs in the operating budget, there'll be transfers recommended.
And what percent of the snow and ice budget is that? The overage? Like, how much do we overshoot that?
We appropriated $630,000 in '25.
That seems like an awful lot to overshoot. I know the last 2 years were,
We turned back money the last 2 years on snow
yeah,
and
no,
ice.
I know, but,
Yeah.
but the baseline budget was an average of the last 5. Like, I think if you called a plow guy, a private plow guy, and asked him how this winter was, he wouldn't tell you it was great. He would tell you it was like, yeah. He would tell you it was better than the last 2, but those I would, if I had another winter like that, I'd retire from the plow business.
Do you want to just, either Stephen or Rob, just will walk through the number of incidents and et cetera compared to the last 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, so in this year alone, we had, we call them 13 events, but a lot of them were back-to-back days. So those carried over a lot from the overtime hours and the amount of plows and service people we need out to clear the streets. So if, you may say, we had, like, the way we listed out, there's 13 events, but we had a 13, call it A, B, and C. That means we went from a Thursday night to a Friday day into a Friday night, where people were working multiple overtime shifts to keep up with the snow. And I think the way they fell with snow and ice, again, we're all sanding and salting as well too. You gotta count those events. That starts to add up very quickly in what we're using for rental equipment, what we're using for sanding and salting materials, and then our staff.
What's going on in the regular overtime assumption for next year? It looks like it's going up by 17%.
Regular overtime is going up 17%. That's one part of the contractual obligations. So as their salaries do increase, you will see an increase in overtime. We also have scheduled for specific town events, any night work and unscheduled call-ins. So each department's required to put in a list of their typical yearly call-ins, predicted amount of unscheduled call-ins, and then, excuse me, and then any of our potential night work that we know we're gonna do in advance.
So if we want to just get a little more granular, Stephen, and not to put you on the spot, but if you want to talk about, so for example, the street division, we're showing a 31% increase. It looks like that's just mostly chasing the actual. We've been under budgeting that in prior years. Yep. Same thing with school buildings. Similar situation with, yeah.
Well, while he's going, where are we with our contract with the Public Works? Where are we with
Collective
that?
bargaining agreements?
Yeah.
They're all settled, yeah.
For how long?
This is the first year of 3-year contracts.
Okay.
FY '20.
What did they get, just to?
So most of the public work, I would say, is Unit A would be, and that's, they got a 3%, 3%. Plus, obviously, if they're, as we said, a lot of new staff are bringing on, so they'll be entitled to step increases.
Do they get step and grade as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to answer the question regarding the overtime, the way it's calculated out for FY '26 on the scheduled part, we have obviously street sweeping, sanitary pickup overnight hours, traffic painting, which happens to be overnight sometimes, based on we can do it. We do have miscellaneous calls that we've tracked. That's an exorbitant amount. That's a good amount of hours for our crew and staff. Snow and ice overtime is obviously has its own items, so we know obviously when they have to go for snow and ice. Town events, we have Zero Waste Day, Household Hazardous Day, Family Festival, open houses, and truck days. So we kind of list out the events we know we're going to do, put hours to those. We leave an item open for miscellaneous, which has actually gone down over the past 2 years, what we've estimated on. And then we have those normal operating procedures that we just do at night because it's easy. It's more beneficial for the crews to be working at night than during the day.
Is this where I'm supposed to ask about the warrant articles, the questions I had?
We'd probably talk about them during the grounds articles, but they are prepared to answer your questions now if you'd like.
Oh, the grounds articles are when?
That's either the 28th or the 30th. The 30th.
Yep.
Yeah, but I'm actually going to be coaching a game on the 30th. So, basically my question is, some of the money that was appropriated for warrant articles last year, those projects weren't completed. And why is that? Specifically, the 2 softball projects.
So drainage for Roland softball field
Yep, and I think there was a sprinkler, redoing the
and
sprinklers in
irrigation
one of the other
improvement
fields. Yep.
at Tiggy's Field. We have that scheduled for the irrigation improvements, we have that scheduled for this summer. The drainage Rollins, which we actually had to do a little bit of a design on, so I have my staff working on that over the winter time. We have that final design, we're just getting some costs together, and we're proposing to probably do that during the middle of the week before games, well, like before the games start. So it'd be once we get the materials in, once we start the project, we could do it this spring or this summer, whichever works for the program. We could do our day work, excavate, clean up the site, make sure it's safe for games, and then come back the next day and finish some of the work. We're expecting probably 1 to 2 weeks worth of work for that.
So it would be 1 to 2 weeks of working on the field every day?
Yeah. But the proposed plan, especially for the drainage, is on the outside, so we're gonna capture all the water that's coming into the dugout area, take that and drain it out towards the, and infiltrate it into the ground along the outside perimeter of the fence, on Roland. So we're not gonna be actually in the field, we're gonna be outside the field.
Okay. Yeah, because like we're at the brink of the season, and there's a lot of volunteer hours that go into removing that water, and I don't know that, like, yeah, you guys, my wife runs DGS, so I'm aware of the effort that goes into this. There's a lot of private fundraising that goes in, that I think they've probably raised more private capital to put into projects for the town than any other league in the past several years. The batting cage, you can look through the warrant articles. There is no warrant article for the softball cage. That was privately funded, every dollar of it. They put that money down. They've raised money to do improvements to the fields after this drainage is done. It's waiting to be deployed. I think the town needs to be more respectful of people that are looking to essentially donate money to for public use, and respond in a timely manner when money gets appropriated.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I am myself in the softball world.
Yeah.
And I take care of my fields in my own town, so I definitely know what it takes. So that is on our list, and that's one of our priorities, absolutely.
I have no other questions.
Bring us home, Wally.
So, I'm having a hard time finding a building maintenance account. Do you have a building maintenance account in here, or is it just scattered through HVAC and, roof, or,
So building maintenance can be part of plumbing maintenance, which is, look at the book 524070, heating maintenance, electrical maintenance.
I saw all that. We don't have a building maintenance account. Everything's just kind of,
It's spread out between the different, I guess, call it mechanical or plumbing components within each building. It's not like a general fund of saying like this, we have one building maintenance fund that we pull all of our work out of for fixing elevators or fixing
obviously
plumbing.
the elevators and the individual stuff, but, I have a building maintenance department. And as much as they do, you would think that, there'd be something here for supplies or woodwork or doors or.
So that we have divisions, so we present the budget always as a roll-up, but that roll-up's broken out into a town buildings division, a school buildings division with their own budgets.
Right, so they will have, we call them glass, lamps, paint, photocopy supplies, lumber, hardware. That's all items that they would use for any building maintenance.
Right. Okay. And I have snow equipment, snow removal equipment. What are we getting for that, for $220,000 this year? As opposed to anything that would come through as a capital expense.
I believe that's the contractors, right?
Snow removal equipment is
Yeah.
rental contractors that we use for our snowplow operations.
Equipment, should that be under contractors and not equipment?
It's both their personnel and their equipment. That's get charged under that line.
Yeah.
And then, I guess I want to bring up our, trash. Curbside pickup, cost, and planning ahead more than anything. I understand what's in the budget. And what year of our contract are we in? I'm trying to look forward more than the budget right now.
Okay.
You want to talk about our contract just a second, tell where we are, how many years are left in it, where we're going to need to plan to go financially with this?
The contract goes out to 2028, I believe. We're into it for our second year, well, it's our fiscal year, but it's our second year with the contract. So at some point, we're gonna have to, start renegotiation with our hauler that we're currently using in the next year or two. And then we're gonna have to make sure that we're planning well in advance for any changes in that contract.
CPI, right? Right now, presently, the rate goes up by CPI every year?
Yeah, 4%. That's what we estimate it on a 4% basis.
So, okay.
So we're a little
But
conservative.
is
on
it CPI?
that. Yes.
So if CPI is 2.5, it's gonna be 2.5.
Yeah.
If it's 6, it's 6. Okay.
And where are we with our, with Reworld and our facility contract?
I believe that was renegotiated 2020 to 2028 as well, so.
Was it,
Covanta?
Was it-
Covanta, the
yeah,
name's something
well,
different
it's
now. Now it's
Reworld
Reworld now.
was there any change in contract with the change in the name?
No.
No.
All right, I'm good.
Good.
Just quickly to go back to the...
Anything from anyone else? Okay.
Thank you. Just to go back to the contract cleaning, exactly, is that only for the schools, or is that for all of our buildings?
That's for all of our buildings.
Okay. I mean, at this point right now, I look at the fact that the entirety of your salaries and wages for tax supported at this point is about full-time, about $4 million. When our contract cleaning being almost 25% of that number. Just to go back to, I think, the thought process, do we get to a point where we need to bring that in-house, and that's a 17% increase I mean, this has been a 35% increase over the last 4 years.
I mean, I know we've done in prior years cost-benefit analysis. Sure, it warrants another cost-benefit analysis, but again, I think, A, the cost to pay the staff, B, can we actually hire the staff, and C, what's the long-term liability of pension and post-employment benefits. So again, not to say that that doesn't shake out and say it makes sense, but there's a lot of factors that will go into that cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, is it also a situation, unfortunately, like we're finding with some of the other contracts that we have to go out to, bus services being the most probably substantial, that there is just no competition for that, and so we are basically at the will of the one or two providers, probably both who end up working for the same company? Is that just where we're at this point, and there's no real competition to be able to get a better contract?
I mean, again, like, we do use the state bid list, so there are a few vendors on there, but again, they also have employees that they have contracts with, so it really depends on how they negotiate those contracts, and then how that price gets reflected onto different towns and entities that use those services. I don't know if that answered your question or not. But
No, it does. I mean, I just, this goes back to what we dealt with last night, which is, when we start seeing 12, 17% increases annually, we can't afford it. And at some point, we're gonna have to change our mindset. We're gonna have to think outside the box, and it's gonna require us, every community has these services. You know, this is an area where Beverly, Salem, Peabody, do you want to team with bigger communities? Do you want to team with smaller communities? But at some point, we need to see if that we can't negotiate better deals by regionalization of these types of services.
the consortium type.
Yeah.
Just talking about janitor, please.
Take the state contract.
I would just mention, one of the things we've done is, try to do RFPs. We'd always fall back on the state contract, but doing an RFP just to see if we can get a better rate
Yeah.
based on our specific needs.
Yeah.
But they're telling me that we did that, and it ended up being that the state contract
This is
was a better
good.
price.
Good, thank you.
Committee's good? Anyone from the audience? Paul?
Yeah, I think Mike brings up an interesting point, but I didn't see the number, Mike, to be honest with you. When you're talking about salary and wages,
I think you did a calculation.
The actual top, the 4.5 million that we pay.
right here. Oh, I see it, okay. Well, I just wanted to clarify that, I got that one, but we're with the public for 3 more years, right?
Yes, correct, until 2028.
And they have an automatic 2.5% potential increase, or is that flexible, or is that just gonna, is that it?
Well, we are in contract with them, so that's based on CPI index, that's how we average what it's gonna be, so.
Just explain I think I understand what you're saying, but
It's
there's no flexibility there, is there?
consumer price index. So we're locked, So if the consumer price index as measured by the Fed goes up 3.5%,
Charge that on the
that's what the
tonnage.
rate goes up by, and if it goes up by 1%, that's what the rate goes up by.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, I'm not done yet. Thanks, Ted. But Republic, okay. I look here, and they're handling refuse collection, correct? We're down at 529010.
Yep, refuse, just, yep, refuse
They handle
collection.
refuse collection, refuse disposal? Is that separate?
Those are two separate items.
Same company?
Same,
No.
JRM does recycling, refuse collection is JRM, refuse disposals is reroll.
Hazardous waste removal?
That's also a separate company,
Yeah, and how about yard waste removal?
another separate company, yep.
Yard waste is by Republic, yeah.
That's by Republic, though.
Not by the same,
Trash and, what's that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
different contract.
No.
Okay.
no, same contract. Same
Trash
contract.
collection and yard waste is the same contract
Same
through
contract,
Republic.
Okay,
Republic does recycling as well.
And recycling.
okay. Thank you, that's it.
Disposal is good.
Bill?
Excuse me. I just want to say, this is an amazing budget. 2.4% increase with what they're doing is just outstanding. And I see what they're doing with, they're trimming trees on Labeo Drive so that it's not interfering with the wires. They're doing it all over. The water breaks they've had, and they've been out 2, 3 in the morning, freezing cold. Snow plowing is always the best around. So, I mean, it's this, our public works is something to be really proud of. Freezing cold, snow plowing is always the best around. Real drastic changes, like heating repairs, 41%. That's 41% up, but HVA maintenance is down 79%. The contract cleaning, as Mike said, it's actually 44%. Over the last 4 years, that's gone up $400,000. So, and then the last one is aeration is down 57%. So can somebody help me with those big swings, please?
Yeah, so we touched on the contract cleaning already, but Stephen, do you want to explain sort of how we've tried to true up better that number with the HVAC and heating?
Yeah, HVAC and heating, this is my first go around, so I had a couple questions myself, and I think we were able to figure it out. So the heating part of it, let me get to that. Heating maintenance is used for repairs above and beyond our standard cleaning of filter changes and maintenance. We also have an annual contract, which is HVAC maintenance. That's contractual obligations to a contractor to come in and just do our everyday check-ins with all of our school buildings, town buildings, treatment plant, ancillary DPW building, any building in the town. So we have one set of the item HVAC maintenance, which is used for just our contractual obligations for the contractor to come in and do their maintenance on a daily basis. And then we have heating maintenance, which is actually the item used for the repairs of those, anything they find during their day-to-day operations.
So, and Bill, just to answer your question, the big swing is because historically we've been using them interchangeably. And this is our effort to properly account for, this is the contract line item, this is the extraordinary repair line item. So when you see the swings in percentages, if you add them together, the track year over year combined is relatively similar. What we're doing is making sure that moving forward, we're better cost accounting on those items.
Okay. And the aeration?
So aeration, yes, you saw that, that's down. That's aeration of grounds for all of our athletic fields. We actually are proposing on 30th, that the warrant articles, to supplement that with a bigger type capital program for aeration for all of our fields. So we're covering just what we need to be able to do to get our fields going in the upcoming fiscal year, and then we'll have a capital program as well for aeration next year as well.
Thank you. Nova? Yeah.
Nova Salmon, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I noticed that the fertilization went up 24%, which is like $10,000. Is that just for the price of fertilization, or are we using more?
That is the price for liquid and granular cost per acre, so that's gone up over the past year. Yep.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't using more fertilization. And with your new line item with pest control, this is just sort of a question as to what kind of pest control do you use? I'm hoping that we can get away from using rodenticides in town on municipal buildings. I know it's becoming a bigger thing throughout the state. They're really terrible for our wildlife. So there are other options, and I'm hoping that we look into those.
Yep.
We're
We'll
good?
definitely look into that. We're good. Thank you.
Okay. Bill?
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting, Precinct 1. I know the town is going to review all of the streets and put them in priority for which is going to be first, which is going to be last to be looked at and refurbished. And you'll be notifying the residents on a street that we're going to be working on your street, so you need to make provisions for. What happens if the residents on the street get notified? Who do they call and say, why are you doing my street? You should be doing that one. I don't care how you decide which is which. My street doesn't need to be retouched. That one does. How do the people in town make someone do?
They can call the town manager's offices the minute they like that they don't want to pave their street. That'd be great.
Well, you understand the difference in some of them. None of us want to pay more in taxes. We'd like to see our money used, what we as individuals are used properly or conscientiously. But when someone says to me, we're going to do this because it's in our schedule to do now, and someone says, now? You should have done it 3 months ago, or why don't you wait till next year to do it? So we call you and bother you?
Stephen, you want to give a sort of what goes beyond just the neighbors on the street, what goes into deciding to pick a street to be paved?
If Bill doesn't want his street, send him to my street.
The first question, I think, yeah, I would defer to town manager if you don't want your street paved. But other than that, we would typically, based on, if we're doing a utility repair or a rehabilitation project, that would be on the list for the streets. Obviously, if we had a bad winter and we see a lot of potholes and trenches, that's also another trigger for us going to a street and potentially providing some repairs. But I think we tried at this point where we've kind of labeled out where we're going to be in the next 5 to 10 years with utility work. And then we've also going to, based on our driving of all the streets with our consultant and given that road index condition score, helps us evaluate what streets we're going to be going to. So if we're going to your street to pave it, it's time. It's time for it to be paved.
Bill? That's two.
Oh, come on. Did he tell you that too?
Yeah.
Yes,
one-
yes.
First one was, eh.
I got my instructions.
Oh, geez. I'm not arguing with him, but it seems to me a few years ago, my street was repaved. And I was told at the time, the only reason it was repaved was they're going to be coming through to cut some of the trees and branches down. And I looked at my street, even with the fuel company trucks going up and down there, it wasn't that bad. Around the corner, there's potholes or whatever, and I'm thinking to myself, why is that particular street being done now when there are others who need, other streets who need more attention? And we'll call you. That was my concern.
Duly noted.
In the
We
next
need,
2 weeks.
We'd like to see our money spent.
Efficiently.
Yes, we would.
All right. Linda?
I gather that the list of 20 or so streets is a fairly stable list over time, in that the number of changes where you might prioritize another street is minimal. The town does a great job on its website Just so people like Mr. Bradstreet can get some advance notice, is it possible that the DPW could put on the website the list of the streets so that instead of, you had mentioned, just call if you wonder if your street is on the list, is it possible to just put it out there and say that these are the next streets to come up in the 3-year plan so that people can take a look at it? And as far as my street is concerned, if it's ever been paved in the 32 years I've been there, I don't remember it. So, and it doesn't need it. It's okay.
There we go.
Yes, so one thing that we've worked on and we'll probably push public facing side will be an interactive like GIS map of the history, so that if you were wondering what your street, when was your street paved, you'd be able to click on that. We'd also have another part of that where it tells you if your street was public or private. Like, so if you see my street's not paved, you click on the next arrow, it says, is this public or private street? And that could probably give you another indication. Tying in the road score potentially is also something we want to make sure it's public facing so people can see it. The next step would be able to get a map of showing where we're going to go based on certain criteria, so people understand that as well. But we obviously want to look at the whole picture, accessibility routes within the town, timing with large infrastructure projects is kind of the two big keys that we use to pick our streets.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Amy Butler, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I'm actually going to switch topics. I'm a little confused about this contract cleaning. It is a huge increase, but you mentioned something about the state list. So do we have to use certain companies that are approved by the state, or can we use anybody we want?
We can do obviously, they have to be a company that's capable of doing the work, but we have done RFPs that anyone the state bid is basically the state goes out to bid for you and locks in pricing with different vendors. Generally speaking, they're the most advantageous price. So that gives us the ability to hire right off that state list. It saves time and effort on our part, and we know we're getting a fair price. If we're not sure that's the best price, we're also free to do an RFP, or request for proposal, in which any companies feel free to bid, and if they can do the work and it's at the correct price, we can award it to them, so.
Okay, all right. And then you mentioned something about bringing it in-house, and you said about, salaries and then maybe pensions and retirement and all that stuff. Is there anything that precludes the town from using 1099 contractors?
That's what we do currently for contract cleaning. It's a vendor.
Meant for like individuals, instead of hiring them as an employee or hiring a company, but maybe hiring individuals as a 1099 contractor for cleaning, that might actually be cheaper. It's just a thought.
I believe that would run afoul of collective bargaining. Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. Some more questions?
Move the question.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's a wrap. What's next? Water sewer.
Next, we have the sewer enterprise budget. Slight increase to salary and wages and operating expenses. Slight decrease to transfers. So that was, we've talked about in prior years, the electric division funded some water meters, a joint project between water, sewer, and electric. Over the past few years, sewer and water have been paying back electric. That concludes in FY26, so it's a lower amount there. Debt, you see some declining debt service. Sewer and water, both, when we borrow for them, again, because we're not limited by Prop 2.5, we can properly stagger the debt. We're able to do declining debt, which obviously saves us on interest in the long term, and also leads to results like this where we have some debt falling off. Capital outlay is the sweeper that we talked about earlier. And then the bulk of the operating budget is really our assessment from South Essex Sewage District. It's an increase of 2.77% on the budget level. In reality, the increase is higher. We had a conservative number last year, so the delta is 2.77, but Steve can give you some information on what the actual assessment increase is year over year. Do you have that number?
So going into this previous year, we're going to see almost a 7% increase, and that's due to two major projects that just occurred at the facility. One was a primary clarifier restoration project. That's roughly a $20 million project that's just starting its debt payment now, so we're responsible for about 17.5 to 18% of that project. We also started paying debt back on our siphon rehab project that we did a few years ago. That was lining the siphons that go underneath the Porter River from River Street and McDowell Ave over to the Doty Ave pumping station that SCSD owns. So those are two large main factors that are causing our Danvers assessment to go up in this next year
Ready for the question?
on the sewer side.
No questions.
Just looks like chemicals are up significantly, 650%. Are we introducing new chemicals or,
Nope, so that's on the water treatment side.
okay.
Those are our typical chemicals that we purchase.
No, Stephen, I think she's on the sewer budget, so that single line item, it's going from 1,000 to 7,500.
It's
I'm
up
sorry.
650%.
Yeah.
Yes, those chemicals are not chemicals those are chemicals that we have used. We use them typically on sanitary sewer overflow events, which is when we have sewage coming up out of the manholes. It helps to destabilize any of the waste that goes onto the street or potentially into the catch basins. So we use that chemical to help lessen that concentration before it gets into our stormwater system.
Okay. I think that was it. That was it.
Okay, Paul.
I'm all set, thanks.
I'm all set also.
So this is the part of the meeting where I fade back into the 80s and tell you an old story. And the the main one is that when I was in town meeting, I always had to sit next to Vern Russell. And if the people from the water department made the mistake to not refer to the water treatment plant as the Vernon C. Russell Water Treatment Plant, the only time Vern, it was the son, young Vern, he was like 90, but he would get up, is to correct everybody to make sure that they called it the Vernon C. Russell Water Treatment Plant. So I feel as though if I don't say that to you right now, I will be visited by him in my sleep, and I do not want to be visited by Vern Russell in my sleep. So please call it the Vernon C. Russell Water Treatment Plant.
That's 2 minutes we can't get back.
We're good there? Question from the audience? One question. No, but no? Okay. And so, yes, Amy?
Looks like it. Amy Butler, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I just noticed that traffic control went down by 44%. What exactly is that?
Traffic control is for our police details that we call in. Yep.
We're good. And so this is for sewer enterprise, and there's another slide for water enterprise coming up next. So a motion for sewer enterprise would be in order.
Move the budget for.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Let's go to water.
And next, we have the water budget. Salary and wages increase related to contractual obligations, as well as an uptick in overtime. Operating expenses, sludge removal, and chemicals, which we're happy to take questions on. Then the debt increase. Again, we authorized $9 million, if you remember, last year, but specifically going out for borrowing purposes, $3.7 million in debt that had been authorized was issued in the past year. So that'll begin to hit our debt budget in FY26. Capital outlay, again, is the $100,000 for the sweeper, and the $15,000 piece is
Blade. Plow. Plow.
plow blade.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. We're happy to answer questions on the water enterprise budget.
No, thank you.
Arthur?
I'm all set.
All set?
Karen?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you.
We're good. We're good.
Could you just, let me just look at this line, explain the water distribution system 924, that 153,000, if you could. What is, It's 592089. 592089. Page 55 for us.
So that would be the new debt that we talked about. So that was, yeah, some water distribution repairs.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Nova.
Nova Samade, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I know that over the past few years, water has been a contentious issue with where we're going to get more and what have you. Is there any thought to starting to put aside money for whatever it is that we're going to have to do, whether it's dealing with PFAS or new storage or anything like that?
Sure, we'd be happy to answer that question. So recently, we've been participating in the North Shore Task Force, which is a resiliency group based on the surrounding communities, and Senator Bruce Tarr's office kind of leading the charge on looking at alternatives for additional water supplies within the region. It's ongoing conversations. There are a few studies going on right now, along with some internal work that we're looking at, reaching out to our partners and neighbors in PBD and Salem Beverly. But it's an ongoing discussion. We don't have the actual numbers yet, but we are starting to talk about the plans of what it may look like to have some type of regional supply or better resilient our own supplies here in Danvers.
How are we positioned today? I know in some communities last week, they went into drought conditions, which I thought was quite interesting this early in the season. How are we positioned?
No, we've been in a severe drought this
well.
whole winter. We didn't have the same amount of rain that we typically have going into the fall and into the winter. Now, the recent snow melt that we had from the snowstorms in March, that melt and the recent storms that we just occurred over every other day now, it seems like we're gaining level in our reservoir, and that's been very helpful and impactful. So we're gaining about I'd say a foot and a half every month, and we're slowly climbing up to where we're going to be in a moderate stage. But it's still obviously weather dependent, and we're still drawing plenty of water over from our auxiliary sources in Middleton to our pond.
Okay. Paul?
I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I mentioned the word desalinization. Has there been any chatter with that, with your group, Beverly, PBA and Salem?
There has been discussion on it, but there hasn't been a deep dive into it yet. Obviously,
It's very expensive, I understand that, but it's going on around the world right now, whether we know it or not, or we care.
It is, yeah, there are plants operating and available.
I think
And
there's
again,
plants
those-
out in California, if I'm not mistaken,
I know some on the islands as well.
yeah. Just there. Tides are going up, they're not going down.
Okay. Bill?
Just a quick one on banking services. It's up 1 year, down, up, down. This year, it's up 12 grand. How come?
Gonna go down again.
Mr. Chair, banking charges are up 12 grand. That's a combination of a few different things. We get charged for funds, that's bank charges, deposits for funds taken in the office, credit card machine payments, invoice cloud, online transaction payments, where actually we've been up 29% this year, so that's an additional banking fee. And then also company payment tech, which we use, which is our credit card transaction processing, that fee went up 6%. And Jellica, from our business division, can easily answer any of those other questions.
You good, Bill?
Hi, Angelica, the business manager. I just wanted to clarify that we have seen an increase in customers paying online. The fee didn't go up 29% for Invoice Cloud. We're just seeing more and more of the ratepayers choosing to pay online, and the utilities absorb the fee for that. We don't charge it to the customer.
Yes, sir. We want to deduct this from next week. I'm just following instructions. You know very well.
Keep a tally.
Everyone operates on a deficit. Bill Bradstreet, Precinct 1. I forgot what my question was.
Oh, damn. Still counts.
You changed it. Oh, God.
Now you know how I feel, Bill.
Oh, no, no.
Now we're two over.
When it comes to water usage, is there ever a thought, or is it out of the question for Danvers to get another reservoir? I know we can't add water capacity in Middleton because we can't. Is there another thought or any thought about another?
You were in town when we tried that. You know the whole story. We went there literally believing we were going, that the Army Corps of Engineers was giving us our final approval. And when we showed up for what we thought was going to be the dedication of it, they said, you can't basically flood a swamp. And so it's not happening.
That I do remember, about that, Middleton. But is there another spot that we can
Flood.
take somebody's land and put a big hole and
Big
save some
pool, very
water?
big pool.
So we don't have that, I know it's very simplistic, but is there a possibility of another reservoir of whatever size, wherever?
We're working on it.
Salem
Mr. King?
gets water out of the reservoir in Danvers. Can't we have that kind of a possibility? We'll take a piece of land and, I don't know, Wenham or whatever, build another reservoir so we can have what we think we need for a reasonable supply? I mean, sorry.
No, I mean, I think these are all good questions, and they're definitely thought-provoking with, water supply. It's a topic everyone talks about. Obviously, the Putnamville Reservoir is owned by the Salem Beverly Water Supply. I know that's one of their key assets, and I don't believe they would give that up. They also own Wenham Lake as well, so they transfer from Putnamville over to Wenham Lake, mostly over during the wintertime, so they use that source. They also have another piece of land that was already reserved or purchased through them decades ago, which they're potentially looking at building a reservoir. But for us, I mean, obviously that cost somewhere in town to purchase the amount of land for the amount of water we think we need would be a huge expense. We've looked at alternatives to potentially raising Middleton Pond Reservoir. We've seen what we potentially can get out of that. But again, we also have wells as well. Let's not say it twice, but we also have wells, which are another primary source that we should be using, and looking to more invest in those sources as well. So I think right now, based on what we predicted as far as our population growth and our water usage, I think we're stable enough right now as far as what we can handle for our growth. I'm not sure if we really need to, I think we need to think about it, but I'm not sure if in the next 10 years we need to start making investments in purchasing land for that aspect.
Okay, Nova.
Since we're on the topic, I just want to add, MWRA, is that something we choose to join, or do we get pulled in?
No, I think absolutely that would be a town vote to connect to any source of MWRA.
Okay, there's a topic.
One more.
We're not gonna get into MWR.
Bill Clark always said we don't have a water problem, we have a storage problem. When you talk about the wells, can we build things to store water?
Yeah, he was absolutely right. There's plenty of water that falls into the basin. It's a point of trying to capture that water. So we're all limited on our structures to try and capture as much as we can. Like I said, we're constantly pumping over Emerson Brook. That's a huge spot that has a huge amount of water, like 700 million gallons that we can transfer over. But sometimes our pumps can't keep up fast enough. So that's something that we're trying to look into, potential capital project, that we don't lose water over the dam, that we're capturing every drop and putting it into our reservoir when we need it. Storage of that capacity, I mean, we have over 9 million gallons in storage right now, but what we're talking about, to your estimate, I think would be somewhere in the 100 million gallons of storage somewhere for resiliency, and that's a large piece of land
All right.
and structure.
Move the budget.
Got a great education. Move the budget, then second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
Thank you. Last, we'll talk about electric. Just to clarify, you won't vote on the electric budget. There will be an electric warrant article that we'll talk about on the 28th. But here to talk about the budget in detail is Clint Allen, our electric utility director.
Percentage of change.
Yeah, we won't vote on this.
Thank you, Rodney. Good evening. All right. So, to run over the basic calendar year 2025 electric budget, just to clarify, that is calendar year 25. We operate a little bit differently than the town, calendar year basis. Just to give the high level, we are projecting to come in about $4 million less than we had budgeted for calendar year 2024. Primarily, if not exclusively, that's due to our purchase power expenses. Really, our operations and maintenance are pretty much level funded from where we were at in '24. We're maintaining progress in some of our large capital projects, the Northland substation over by the Liberty Tree Mall. A lot of reconductoring work you've probably noticed to rebuild and harden the lines that are going to be coming out of that substation. But to dig into the power supply aspect of that a little bit, and we've already kind of, this has been a great, thank you, Mr. King, it's been a great laid some good groundwork for the last 2 winters, talking about snow and ice. They were very mild. So when we go into our power supply budgeting, we take a look at a 3-year rolling historic average. We always budget very conservatively, so we take a look at what's our maximum transmission bill gonna look like, what's our maximum capacity bill gonna look like, what's our maximum wholesale market exposure gonna look like. We set our budget to accommodate all of those expected costs. Over 23 and 24, especially in January and February, we had budgeted for a more typical, I guess you could say, New England winter, where you actually have ponds that freeze and you actually get, plowable snow, but for those 2 winters, we didn't see the market exposure. We didn't see the volatility in the gas markets that we'd experienced in, 2020, 2021, and, going back even farther. So that budget came in high. We essentially over-collected around $2 million in 2023 for expected power supply expenditures. We did the same thing again in 2024. So at the end of 2024, looking at it, we were carrying in about $4.4 million in our power supply surplus. And as a municipal light plant, we are required from the Department of Public Utilities to return that money to the ratepayers. So I think I used this joke at the select board, but as much as Jason would love to fund the entire Northland substation with that money, and I know Mr. Landers would also probably be in favor of that, we need to return that money to the ratepayers. So the way we are doing that is in the calendar year 25, we have set our revenue expectations and our rates to essentially return that $4 million over the course through the year to land at the end of 2025 where we want to be in our surplus fund for power supply, which is 2% of total budget. It's about $600,000 figure. So really that is the biggest, I would say the difference from last year's budget. We are maintaining our depreciation expense at 5%. That funds our capital projects, as I've mentioned. And I think with that, we go to the power supply.
Sure.
Will, so the other big development for 2025 is, as you can notice from our energy resources budget, this represents all of our firm power contracts that we have with third parties, and then it also represents the portion of our portfolio that is unhedged or that's exposed to the wholesale energy market. The big news for this year is we are, as you can see, we are down to one small gas contract and one extremely small oil peaker contract. So we are actually 80% non-carbon. We have sourced 80% of our portfolio as non-carbon sources of energy, which puts us ahead currently of the 2040 mandate that the state has imposed on municipal light plants a few years ago. So I think that's a great, it's where we would like to be, it's where we strive to be, and the good news is that we've been able to negotiate these contracts in a way that it keeps the price blended in with our historic, lack of a better word, happy place. So it's where it keeps our rates stable, it's where our customers have, and the ratepayers have seen the rates for, historically the last 12 to 15 years, and we're able to do that without having to rely on, the volatile gas markets, essentially. So, with that, yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Wally,
I'm actually good.
you good?
I think every April Fool's Day, you should send a bill using rates of the most adjacent for-profit operators to people. So I don't think that enough people give the town and the department credit for how good we have it here, both from a rate standpoint and from a reliability standpoint. Like, you seriously should send a bill on April Fool's Day.
With the grid prices? Yeah.
The nuclear, have you noticed, has there been any competition for supply from data centers, things like that?
The only competition we've seen, so for Seabrook specifically, which is our biggest chunk, that's our long-term contract out to 2050, National Grid actually became extremely interested in purchasing nuclear percentages and upping their portfolio, because for a while nuclear was kind of on the way out. So that was a couple years ago. At that time, we worked with our consortium of other utilities and our advisors, and we actually were able to pull together and secure this other contract here to be competitive, so National Grid couldn't just scoop it all up. So we actually grabbed that other slice of NextEra over there too.
Is there is that supply, is it, like you mentioned, obviously nuclear was out of favor for a long time. Is that, is the horizon for the nuclear projects extending and the nuclear supply extending more than,
Yeah, so the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, they've recently, they bumped the Seabrook plant that was set to decommission in 2040, they've extended that to 2050. The Millstone, similar, they pushed that one out to 2045, it was 2035. And I have just on a, industry chatter level, heard more talk about refurbishing old plants, and then there's also the concept of micronuclear, which is kind of, smaller, more localized plants. But it seems like there's definitely, for the first time in, I don't know, decades, that there's been a push there's been a renewed interest in nuclear development.
okay. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
So I agree with Ted. I don't think people appreciate, so I think people really appreciate the municipality, your services and everything, but I do think if they knew that they had a rate drop, they would appreciate it even more and maybe complain about less of their overall spend with the town if they see other rates increase. So I think in general, marketing yourselves a little bit better would help, right? I did see that computer software is up around 300K. Is that just, new requirements that you need, or?
We're actually going through a whole, the business division, our financial software, we're going through a complete overhaul for the first time in, dare I say, 30 years.
Yeah, I'm
Is that
sure
right,
it's
Angelica?
needed. Yeah, okay.
So-
Just wasn't sure if it was security or other things.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, good. Thank you.
Thanks.
If you combined your, what is the percentage up there if you combine all your nuclear?
It's about almost 60%.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, great. No new plants, so you may refurbish, but right now, no new plants out there that you know of?
Right, I have, in New England, in the Midwest, there are a couple, but in New England, I have not heard of any new proposals.
Okay, all right. I think that's it for me. All set.
I reiterate what Ted said because I live it every day. I go to my office in Topsfield that's serviced by National Grid. Right, Linda? And we pay much higher rates. Right, Mike?
It's true.
Pay much higher rates, and if the power goes up, could be days. Here, rates are much better, and the power's back on right away. So Ted's right. I live it. So I have nothing but good things to say about Danvers Electric.
Well, we appreciate that very much.
So I have the pleasure of serving on the Municipal Light Board.
Newly
and-
reappointed, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Don't remind me.
Good resignation, Mike.
Yeah.
Going to recuse yourself?
So, every month, maybe every other month when I actually go to the meeting, we will, we get a little sheet, and it shows us where we rate in comparison to not just the big commercial providers, which are, astronomically higher, so you're paying sometimes 3 times the amount that we pay as an average ratepayer. And obviously, the service is substantially less. We also, on a monthly basis, get to see our reliability numbers as well. But the same is true in regards to the other municipals. I mean, we find ourselves battling on a monthly basis, basically with Middleton and Peabody, to be who has the lowest bill. And so, and Aaron's right in that we really think that we need to do a better job of letting the people know that you are getting the best rate and the best service combined together that you really get anyplace. I will say this. For the first time in the 40 years that I've been involved in town government, we have seen the state regulators propose things that are at least a tiny bit antagonistic towards municipal providers. These are not things that should be individually any concern to us. They aren't going to, if these things were adopted, they would not have a substantial impact on our operation or the type of service. But we cannot let the same thing happen to us with our electric light division that happened to us with our hospital. The electric light division is a wholly owned subsidiary of the town of Danvers. It's how it operates. We need that wholly owned subsidiary to be able to operate our town government. Not just the $1.5 million that gets put aside every year now in lieu of taxes. Not just the huge number of projects and involvements that the electric light does in order to be able to make Danvers a better place to live. But more importantly, the residents of Danvers and the ratepayers of Danvers will get absolutely screwed if we have to become customers of either one of those 2 primary commercial providers. So I will ask everybody, again, the tens of people who are watching this at home right now, make sure that if you want to do something, protect your municipal electric light division. That it is at this point the most critical thing we can do in this town to make sure that we continue to have the quality of life that we have, is to have that stay. We're really fortunate. We have wonderful people who operate this for us. We have great employees up and down that line. But we can't afford to lose that wholly owned subsidiary, so.
Well said. So, also as a former member of the Municipal Light Board, I certainly will echo the sentiment that everyone has said. We do appreciate the great work that you all do every day. And since we have several members of Precinct 1 in the room, not because I live in Precinct 1 across from this project, but they would like to know the timeline on the Liberty Tree Mall project, which, you guys have been working on for a while.
Yep. Yeah, so we are we're heavy into the construction phase now, where you have secured the equipment that's going in the station. That will be delivered throughout the rest of this year. We're looking to have that system online, Jason, on mid-26. Mid-26 online. And then the good news is once that station is energized, we will be able to scrape the old station and all the trees and brush and shrubs that everybody has to lean way out and almost get T-boned.
You couldn't get to the trees any sooner?
They're not our trees, but we could take them out and we can take care of the old substation.
You can't get
The
to
whole
them.
thing is going, the whole substation. You have a nice clear line of sight around Verizon.
You couldn't do it in 2025?
We're working on it.
Just those corner trees, just cut it back a little bit, just run a tree into it accidentally, run a truck into it. I'm just saying. So, That's helpful, thank you. Audience, no.
Does town meeting have the authority to override the return of the $4 million? Like, since we've already paid it in, can we just use it for some kind of capital project instead of, we can't override that? Town
No,
meeting
I
can't
think
vote to
Clint,
override.
if you want to clarify again that's by DPU needs to be returned back to the ratepayers. That's not considered like retained earnings like on water and sewer. We could just do it for any project, yeah.
Right, but like the town meeting can't vote to override that and.
Good try.
Plenty of people have tried, to, you know.
Linda, please.
As a former Peabody resident, I am always very interested at the end of a year to see how the rankings are. There is a listing that shows who comes in the lowest, and that way. It's almost like a horse race where we come down to the finish line and it's a photo finish, but Peabody always seems to beat us out by .00 cent and comes in first. Have we come in first yet?
No, because Middleton actually is now the lowest.
Really?
Linda's moving to Peabody.
There we go.
Right?
Anyone else? We're good?
I have a question.
We appreciate it.
I have a question.
All right, back to the committee.
Just, I don't know if this is the proper place to ask it, but the pilot this year is 1.5 million? And a follow-up on that is, I should know this, but I don't really. Water and sewer, do they contribute at all through a pilot program or no?
They pay a pilot in lieu of taxes, a small amount just for the land they own, but this is more of a voluntary contribution which is allowed by the DPU and by state law, back to the town.
Well, is, in your estimation, you know, or anybody, would water and sewer be able to contribute more, or is it just that tight?
It would translate directly to a rate increase, so I don't think that would be.
Okay, forget it. I don't want to have people.
Okay, and so we do not vote on this. This is in a warrant, right? And so if there are no further questions, we will thank everyone for their time.
Thank you.
All right.
I can't get it. Now you're just going to piss me off.
You got a ticket? You got a ticket? You got a ticket?
That was first. Okay.